Could the US president be born in a town with fewer than 500 people? The United States is a country filled with massive cities, where millions of people hustle through their daily lives surrounded by towering skyscrapers and endless noise. But what if I told you that some of the most iconic political figures in American history came from places that are far from the bustling metropolises? Places where the silence is almost deafening and the population so sparse you could count the people in one hand. Let's start with someone you all know, Donald Trump. He was born in Queens, New York, one of the 5 boroughs that make up the gigantic mosaic of New York City. It's a place that never sleeps, always alive with opportunity and filled with people from every corner of the world. Trump's upbringing in Queens wasn't just ordinary. He grew up in a world of privilege, surrounded by the endless energy of the city that defined American ambition. The towering skyline, the constant rush of people, it was all part of the environment that shaped his bold, larger-than-life personality. It's easy to see how growing up in such a place could fuel someone's desire for fame and fortune. Now, on the opposite coast, we have Kamala Harris. She was born in Oakland, California, a city smaller than New York, but no less intense. Oakland has a history of social activism, deep cultural roots, and a fighting spirit. When Harris was growing up, the city was alive with political energy. Her parents were activists in the civil rights movement, and the city itself was a hub of progressive change. It's no wonder Harris developed a passion for justice and equality. Oakland shaped her values, just as Queens shaped Trump's. Both cities are bustling, thriving with activity, and full of opportunities for those ready to take them. But then there's Calvin Coolidge. He was born in a place that seems almost out of a storybook, Plymouth, Vermont. Imagine a small, quiet village tucked away in the rolling hills of Vermont with a population so small you could probably meet every single resident in one afternoon. This is where Coolidge entered the world, far removed from the chaos of Queens or the activism of Oakland. It's a place where time seems to stand still, where the pace of life is slow and the surrounding landscapes stretch on endlessly. Even today, Plymouth remains a tiny dot on the map, home to fewer than 700 people. Why would anyone in such a small, isolated place, you might wonder? Well, in Coolidge's time, life in rural America was vastly different from what it is now. Small villages like Plymouth were once a backbone of the country, self-sufficient communities where people lived off the land and rarely needed to leave. It was a quiet, modest existence, far removed from the industrial boom taking place in cities. As the country shifted from an agrarian society to one dominated by industry and urbanization, places like Plymouth started to shrink. People began moving to cities in search of better jobs, more opportunities, and the conveniences of modern life. What was once a thriving little community became a relic of the past, preserved more for its historical significance than its livability. In a way, Coolidge's birthplace represents a world that no longer exists. It's a window into a simpler time, before cities like New York and Oakland become the bustling powerhouses they are today. While Trump and Harris were shaped by the energy and opportunity of big cities, Coolidge's upbringing in a small village gave him a very different perspective on life and leadership. He was quiet, reserved, and believed in limited government, a stark contrast to the larger-than-life personas of modern politicians. It's fascinating to think about how the place where you're born can shape your outlook on the world, and Coolidge's tiny village bringing undoubtedly played a role in his approach to politics. But what's really interesting is why so few people live in places like Plymouth today. The answer lies in how America has changed over time. Back in the early 20th century, where Coolidge was growing up, small towns were common and many future leaders came from similar places. But as the country grew, people gravitated towards cities where they could find jobs, education, and a better standard of living. It's a trend that continues today. Urban areas grow while rural populations shrink. Plymouth is a perfect example of this shift. It's quiet, beautiful, and steeped in history, but for most people, there's no reason to stay there when bigger opportunities lie elsewhere. Yet, despite its isolation and tiny population, Plymouth gave birth to a president, a man who, like Trump and Harris, would stand at the helm of the nation. But while Trump was shaped by the skyscrapers of New York and Harris by the activism of Oakland, Coolidge came from a place where the biggest building in town might have been a barn. And that difference is what makes this story so compelling. It shows us that no matter where you come from, whether it's the streets of New York or its quiet hills of Vermont, greatness can arise from anywhere. Today, Plymouth Notch stands almost like a time capsule. You can visit the small home where Coolidge was born, walk through the quiet streets he once walked, and see firsthand the simplicity of the life he knew before he became president. It's a place frozen in time, a stark contrast to the cities where most of America's leaders now come from. And yet, it's a powerful reminder that leadership doesn't always come from where you'd expect. Sometimes it comes from the most unlikely of places. As we look forward to the next U.S. election, it's worth reflecting on the birthplaces of the candidates. While Donald Trump and Kamala Harris hail from bustling cities full of life, Calvin Coolidge came from a tiny town where the population has barely grown in over a century. Each of these places, Queens, Oakland, and Plymouth Notch, has shaped these figures in different ways, reflecting the changing dynamics of America itself. The contrast between them is striking, yet it also shows us that leadership can emerge from anywhere, whether it's a city of millions or a village of a few dozen. In the end, where a person is born may not determine their destiny, but it certainly influences their journey. And the stories of Trump, Harris, and Coolidge remind us that the path to leadership is as varied and unpredictable as the places they come from. Whether you're born at the heart of New York City, the vibrant streets of Oakland, or the quiet hills of Vermont, your origins are just the beginning of the story. If you enjoyed this journey through the unique birthplaces of some of America's most iconic leaders, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating stories. We've got plenty of content coming your way, diving into the unexpected places and events that shape the people who've shaped history. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Where do you think the next great leader might come from? Whether it's a small town or a big city, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.